conversation and not talk about reproductive access. So out of curiosity, would you consider the medical management of a miscarriage to be potentially a life-saving usage? Yes or no?
I have to decline to answer that because
that is
it's
perfectly
under
fine.
adjudication by the Supreme Court.
That is perfectly fine. I'm gonna tell you yes, but I'm gonna give you another question that you can answer. Would you consider erectile dysfunction as a life-saving usage for Viagra?
Not life-saving.
Not life-saving. Okay, well, I'm going to tell you that based on my research that mifepristone actually has life-saving characteristics, yet Viagra doesn't. And for those that don't know, Viagra, from my understanding, is actually nearly 10 times greater as it relates to risk of death. Yet for some reason, it's not sitting in the court right now. And I do appreciate the fact that you laid out that when it comes down to getting drugs approved, they actually go through trials. It's not just randomness. You take the randomness, you then say, maybe there's some evidence here, and then you put it through the ringer. After putting it through the ringer for decades, women's lives have been saved. And as a representative from the area that Roe v. Wade actually initiated, I am appalled because for whatever reason, some people want us to go back to horse and buggy in this country. And I think since now maybe we have the internet, maybe we should take advantage of it. And we shouldn't say that we should remain in the times of horse and buggy. And so with that, thank you for the work that the FDA does. I respect your research. I recognize that the courts don't do research. I also recognize that this chamber seemingly doesn't care about research. But because of the work that you do, there are lives that are being saved, and I need you to be funded to the fullest extent to make sure that we can continue to save American lives. Thank you.
Chair has failed to meet its mission statement and is defined by crisis from persistent drug shortages to the most significant disruption to the infant formula market in history. We cannot afford to overlook these critical failures. The well-being of all Americans depends on it. Commissioner, I look forward to hearing from you today and on how to address these pressing issues. Despite the backdrop of food and product safety issues plaguing your organization, FDA continues to chase nutrition-related policies like front-of-pack labeling, which are arguably outside of FDA's purview. Can you explain to the committee what authority you feel FDA has to pursue nutrition labeling policy while heavy metals exist in our food supply, illicit Chinese tobacco products remain accessible, and 263 drugs remain in shortage?
We actually have a law that instructs us about food labeling that we're adhering to in this case. And I would remind you, we have a shortened life expectancy in this country, particularly in rural areas. It's largely driven by diet and poor nutrition. It seems to me, I'm just from South Carolina, it seems to me that putting the information on the front of the package is probably more likely to get the useful information so people can make wise choices. That doesn't seem to me like something that should be that hard to get to. If you put it on the back, if you're like me when you go to the store, you're unlikely to look at it.
Can you tell me where you derive the authority to do it, though, specifically?
Yeah, I'll be glad to get with your staff and go through the details of that, but we believe we do have that authority.
I look forward to seeing that. Do you feel it's a best use of taxpayer dollars to shape American eating patterns in lieu of addressing these other critical issues? I listed a few issues that seem like a pretty big deal, and you feel like...
Certainly tobacco is a huge one, but I'd have to say, if we look at the fact that we have the lowest life expectancy of any high-income country, it's being driven by chronic diseases, which are being driven by diet. And so to say that we should pay no attention to diet is a mistake. Now, shaping, what we're doing is proposing to give people the information they need so that they can make healthy choices and reduce these alarming rates of obesity, diabetes. I'm a cardiologist, vascular disease. I tell my cardiology colleagues we got no problem with business in the future in cardiology.
I only have a limited amount of time. I pointed to front-of-pack labeling as an example, but it appears the agency has a number of outstanding rulemakings and goals that are not related to food safety. The definition of healthy a symbol for healthy, the dietary guidelines for Americans, dietary guidance statements, the list goes on. Can you please tell the committee and consumers how all of these pieces fit together? My concern is that not only are you pursuing actions that you do not have the authority for, but you are also painting a terribly confusing landscape of rules and advice about what to eat.
Well, be happy to work with your staff on going through this in more detail, but in short, what we now know about diet, it's a pattern of eating over time that's important, and how long people live and whether they're burdened by chronic diseases. It's not one specific thing. It's multiple constituents of the diet when eaten regularly in a pattern create the kinds of health problems that are really ravaging our country right now. If you look at rural areas in particular, we're seeing alarming premature death rates that are going in the wrong direction, actually, for the first time in 50 years.
My question, you said that earlier. My question is specifically all of these different initiatives, how they work together, and I look forward to getting an answer on that to my actual question. It's been brought to my attention that illicit flavored disposable e-cigarettes now make up a majority of the entire e-cigarette market, which most of these products are coming from China. Can you speak to the factors that have allowed this issue to materialize and what your agency plans to do to rectify the situation?
Yeah, thanks. I mean, we've been over this several times already this afternoon, but in brief, no one anticipated 27 million applications for vaping products when the door was open for applications. It has been a problem that is quite large and that we're gradually making progress in as our review.
What are you doing about it?
Warning letters, civil money penalties, injunctions, and seizures, all of the above. And I hope that we'll continue to be able to increase our presence out there in the field. Right now, we get no user fees from the vaping industry, and that money would enable us to put a lot more people in the field to take down these operations that you're talking about.
It sure feels like warning letters aren't getting the job done. Can you walk us through whether and how you personally have communicated these concerns to DOJ and Customs?
We've had direct meetings, and I've personally gone to several places of import to meet with the Border Patrol and Customs people who are there when the stuff comes in. By the way, if you want to get an education on this, go to the International Mail Facility.
What about the DOJ?
Direct person-to-person meetings with DOJ. I have the key person's cell phone number to call in off hours.
I'm over time. I yield back, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Gentleman yields back. Chair now recognizes Mr.
FDA issues did come up. I want to start with this. How much of what FDA is doing covering specifically food safety? I mean, how much of your resources right now is dedicated to food safety?
Yeah, for detail, I would refer you to the Reagan-Udall report that we commissioned last year that has the detailed information.
Is it like 50%? Or?
Nowhere near 50%, although the F in food and FDA stands for food.
Yeah.
On the medical product side, we've had very good funding because of the user fees, but not on the food side.
Mr. Chair, I do want to submit for the record an article, the FDA's food failure.
Without objection, so ordered.
And I need to talk about this because it comes up a lot. FDA right now has the authorization to regulate water to keep deadly toxin out of produce, right?
The water is actually a mixed. We regulate bottled water. The water supply itself is regulated by EPA, as just noted. Water on farms, as it goes from where cattle may be, for example, to plants, that's an area that
Commissioner, I'm going to read from the article. I think this is important just as background. And I know it was like a couple months maybe after you got confirmed. Quote, by the time FDA officials figured out it was spinach that was making people sick in 10 states, sending 3 people into kidney failure, it was too late. It was mid-November 2021, and the packaged salad's short shelf life had passed. There was no recall. By the time FDA officials got inspectors on the ground, spinach season was over. The fields in the production facilities were empty, which made it impossible to pinpoint the source of contamination. What caused the outbreak was likely never fixed. Have we fixed this kind of issue? Again, what was suspected because of previous kind of contamination, it is the food, it could be the water that's used to, that touches the food, used to clean the produce.
You know, when you say, is it fixed, you know, what I would say is The Economist rated the U.S. food safety as tied for first in the world.
know,
but
but
is it
Commissioner,
completely fixed?
Yeah,
Of
look,
course not.
I work on Get the Lead Out Caucus. My colleagues know I'm a leader on this issue on quality of water. I want to help you. This is more me trying to show my colleagues that if we really cared about food safety, which every single one of our constituents doesn't use every single medication that everybody talked about, but they sure heck gather produce, touch the food industry in every way. And so I just want to get to the bottom of what we can do together to ensure that you have authorization to oversee water quality that touches our food.
All right, we're just finalizing now. You know, there are 10 rules of FSMA, food safety modernization. The agricultural water rule is one that's very pertinent, and it has to do with what farms should do. For example, if there are cattle upstream from where the produce is. And so, you know, there's a list of things we need. We can be in touch with your staff.
So we don't really have anything right now that gives you any authority over water, the use of water on produce.
Only in reaction to what happens, but not.
So after contamination.
Yeah, not preemptive.
Okay, well, that's important for us to know, and I hope the chair and I and others can work on this. The other question I have, and it's regarding food too, and I'm sorry, I know your medical background, but food is so incredibly important here. Does the FDA have authorization to oversee food packaging, right? How about PFAS, the use of PFAS? What are we doing about the use of packaging around PFAS? Which is forever
PFAS
chemicals.
relates to the surfaces of food containers, and
Sure.
like I was surprised to hear that we even regulate dishwashers when I came in because of this. Yes, and it's a big.
So how do we do it?
We have studies that sample, but at very low rates because the funding is quite low.
So we don't really enforce it.
Not to the extent we could. Let me just say, you know, we're going through, as we've discussed, the largest reorganization in the history of the FDA. Food is the entire focus of.
Yeah, Commissioner, I mean, I hear that we have some of the highest rates of cancer in the world. Is that correct?
We do.
Yeah, I really think we should really prioritize. So when we talk about reorganization of FDA, I do hope and that we can work all together in a bipartisan way to make sure that food safety is at the center of making sure that we have resources. Again, this is just me highlighting to my colleagues and really educating the American public that we need to do more around food safety.